Hello.
Yes,
Hello, Ina. Please admit Rashmi Shetty Tupe, ma'am.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Kiran is waiting.
Good morning, Vaidehi ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning, Vaidehi.
Good morning.
How are you? Doing good?
Yes.
Okay.
Hope you're well.
Yes. We are all ready for the this thing.
Yes.
We'll just start in some time. Just 2
Sure,
minutes. I
sure.
think. Just 2 minutes. At 10 exactly we start. Okay. So when we can start? It's 10? Yeah. Okay. So we start. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fourth day of this week-long value development workshop, which was envisaged and incorporated by two like-minded colleges, um, Srimati MP Shah Women's College of Arts and Commerce, Vadala, and Srimati Surajba College of Education, Juhu. Together, we wanted to instill some good thoughts and ideas into the persona of our learners so that when they become an independent human being and try to do decisions and take sides in life, they are normally on the better side, on the path of the like good and truth and everything. And looking at the world, we see that the values are dwindling by each passing day, and that sort of worried us. And together we thought that let's make some difference. I don't know how much we'll be able to make, but nevertheless, we need to try. And if we don't try, we have no right to become teachers, because teachers cannot be quitters. They cannot quit. They have to understand that they have to keep trying till eternity, and see what effect they can make, and affect the future of the child. Today is the fourth day, and as the flyer is being displaying, today we are going to talk on a very unique value, and that is aesthetics. And the idea is that I'm sure half of my children who are there in the way may have not even thought about it if given one chance also to look into this value. But before that, we would like to start our day by remembering the Almighty and invoke His blessing for the day. May I request the students of Srimati Maniben, MP Shah College of Commerce and Arts, to lead the prayer. Please welcome, students.
मैम हम दिख रहे हैं?
Yes, start you. Start कर.
सर्वधर्म प्रार्थना, वैदिक प्रार्थना। ले जा असत्य से सत्य के प्रति, ले जा तम से ज्योति के प्रति, मृत्यु से ले जा अमृत के प्रति, चले साथ और बोले साथ, दिल से हिल मिल जिए साथ, अच्छे कर्म करे हम साथ, बैठ के 7 बजे हम ना, वो संकल्प समान समान, हो जन जन के हृदय समान, सबके मन में भाव समान, निश्चय सम हो कार्य समान। ताओ प्रार्थना। सद्व्यवहार करे जो मुझसे, उनसे सद्व्यवहार करूं, दुर्व्यवहार करे उनसे भी मैं तो सद्व्यवहार करूं, दुर्जनों को सज्जन करने का सदाचार उपचार है, द्वेष क्रोध को पिघलाने का सही तरीका प्यार है। जय प्रार्थना। क्षमा में चाहता सबसे, मैं भी सबको करूं क्षमा, मैत्री मेरी सभी से हो, किसी से बैर हो नहीं। मुस्लिम प्रार्थना। दयावान को करूं प्रणाम, कृपावान को करूं प्रणाम, विश्व सकल का मालिक तू, अंतिम दिन का चालक तू, तेरी भक्ति करूं सदा, तेरी इबादत करूं सदा, दिखा हमें तू सीधी राह, जिन पर तेरी रहम निगाह, ऐसों की जो सीधी राह, दिखा हमें वह सीधी राह, जिन पर करता है तू क्रोध, भ्रमित हुआ है ये गुमराह, उनके पथ का लूं नहीं नाम, दयावान को करूं प्रणाम। बौद्ध प्रार्थना। जीतो अक्रोध से क्रोध, साधुत्व से असाधु को, कंजूसी दान से जीतो, सत्य से झूठवाद को, वैर से न कदापि भी मिटते वैर है कहीं, मैत्री ही से मिटे वैर, यही धर्म सनातन। ईसाई प्रार्थना। शांति का वाद्य बना तू मुझे, प्रभु शांति का वाद्य बना तू मुझे, शांति का वाद्य बना तू मुझे, प्रभु शांति का वाद्य बना तू मुझे, हो तिरस्कार जहाँ करूँ स्नेह, हो हमला तो क्षमा करूँ मैं, हो जहाँ भेद अभेद करूँ, हो जहाँ भूल मैं सत्य करूं, हो संदेह वहाँ विश्वास, घोर निराश वहाँ करूं आस, हो अंधियार वहाँ पे प्रकाश, हो जहाँ दुख उसे करूं हास, शांति का वाद्य बना तू मुझे, प्रभु शांति का वाद्य बना तू मुझे।
एक ओंकार सतनाम करता पुरख निर्भव निर्वैर अकाल मूरत अजूनी सैभम गुरु प्रसाद जप आदि सच जुगादि सच है भी सच नानक होते भी सच। देह मंदिर चित्त मंदिर एक तेथे प्रार्थना सत्य सुंदर मंगलाची नित्य हो आराधना सत्य सुंदर मंगलाची नित्य हो आराधना दुःखितांचे दुःख जावो ही मनाची कामना वेदना जाणावयाला जागवू संवेदना दुर्बळांच्या रक्षणाला पौरुषाची साधना सत्य सुंदर मंगलाची नित्य हो आराधना सत्य सुंदर मंगलाची नित्य हो आराधना जीवनी नव तेज राहो अंतरंगी भावना सुंदराचा वेद लागो मानवाच्या जीवना शौर्य लाभो धैर्य लाभो सत्यता संशोधना सत्य सुंदर मंगलाची नित्य हो आराधना सत्य सुंदर मंगलाची नित्य हो आराधना भेद सारे मावळू द्या वैर साऱ्या वासना मानवाच्या एकतेची पूर्ण होवो कल्पना मुक्त आम्ही फक्त मानो बंधुतेच्या बंधना सत्य सुंदर मंगलाची नित्य हो आराधना सत्य सुंदर मंगलाची नित्य हो आराधना देह मंदिर चित्त मंदिर एक तेथे प्रार्थना सत्य सुंदर मंगलाची नित्य हो आराधना सत्य सुंदर मंगलाची नित्य हो आराधना। थँक यू।
Thank you very much, students of Srimati Maniben MP Shah Women's College of Arts and Commerce. It indeed was very mesmerizing to hear you chanting the faiths of different kinds and, you know, like making us understand that ultimately we are all one together. Whatever name we called our Almighty, it is more or less the same. Thank you so much. And the song that you recited, Shaurya Labho, Dhairya Labho, Satyacha Sansodhana. Today we are going to do that. You know, we are going to find out what is Satya and why we have to find Satya and how it is connected to our topic today. But before that, it's customary to ask to the heads of the institute to welcome the guest. May I request my principal, Dr. Judy Grace Andrews, to please welcome the guests that are present today in this seminar. Thank you very much. Judy Ben, it's yours.
Thank you, Sabyaben. Good morning, one and all. It's indeed yet another time to really enjoy the day learning about values. As it was said by Sabyaben, yes, values are declining, and it is very important to know our roots, know our values. And when we, though some people say it is a little late to teach values, I believe values are caught and not taught. So unless and until we exhibit values to the people around, we will not have a world which will be having values in them. Saying that, today we have yet another way of learning the values of aesthetics. And this is from Museum on Wheels. Common adage is, if mullah cannot come to the mountain, mountain should come to mullah. In this pandemic time, we are unable to go to museum. Museum used to be one of our, important place to visit and learn. We in our institution teach our students how museum can be a place of teaching and learning. So now museum is on wheels and they're coming to us. What a privilege and what a joy to know about every values attached to this. When you think of museum, it's historical value, it's monumental value. It is something which is very unique for every state, every nation. It's a pride. So to understand and to imbibe those values is really a great time for us. And to share with us, we have a very young budding curator. Nice to see young women coming up. Ms. Vaidehi Tonal, Assistant Curator, International Relations, Museum on Wheels. Vaidehi, it's indeed my proud privilege to have you in our midst on this particular day to help us understand the aesthetic value behind this great monument. This is museum. And I'm sure you will take us through the history and you will take us through the beautiful aspects of museum, and we will be able to learn a lot from you. And it's very happy to learn from young minds because you all think differently. Your minds are always operate in a very different manner. So it's very, I'm very happy to have a young budding person to come and educate us. Learning can be taken from anyone. So that's what we believe and that's what we do as well. So thank you, Sabiabin, for inviting also the young budding people so that we can learn from all. I welcome on this wonderful seminar. I welcome all the people who are involved, especially all of them from Maniben Shah, the principal, the professors, and the students, and from Surajba College of Education, the professors as well as our students. Let's all learn together. May it be a very learning time for all of us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Judy Ben. That was very nice. Yes, when I contacted Museum on Wheels 2 months back, I was little skeptical that whether they would accept our proposal or not. Let me also mention Simran George, who was the liaison between us, and she almost worked her, like mighty, plethora of work she did to connect me to Vaidehi, and it took quite some time for us to align our program. But nevertheless, I never lost hope that we would bring Museum on Wheels to all our students who were not able to go to museum. And museum is a source of learning. In fact, it's a lighthouse of learning. It's a beacon of knowledge, which we fail to register, recognize, and learn from. So I had promised myself that come what may, I'm going to make MOW, take our request in and be a part of our seminar. Thank you so much, MOW and the Indian Museum, the director of the Museum of Shahaji Raja Vastu Sangrahalaya, all the people, all the assistants, all the technicians for taking our request in and being here today. But before we go there, I don't know, my young students may not exactly understand why this aesthetic value. And before they plunge themselves into this wonderful, wonderful thought process, I thought, let me give them a bit of insight of what is aesthetics, first of all, It will take about 3 minutes for me to finish that. Asamta, can you please share the PPT with you that I have sent it to you? Asanta, are you facing any challenge, beta? So I should open my PPT, is it?
Ma'am, can you see the PPT on screen?
1 second, beta. Yes, yes, I can. Thank you very much. So today we are going to talk about the aesthetic aspects of value development. And if you look at the background of the screen, I don't know whether you see images, colors, shapes, designs, I don't know what all you see, but you see something that makes your day better. It gives you a positive vibe. It gives you something that is wonderful, and you cannot take your eyes off something that is being displayed on the screen. And well, that is aesthetic. The next slide, please. So what is aesthetic in everyday life? It's a branch of philosophy dealing with the nature of beauty, art, and taste, and with the creation and appreciation of beauty. I don't know whether you have learned to appreciate beauty or not, or I don't know what is your parameters of beauty, but this is basically a branch, a whole knowledge. Aesthetic is a philosophy. You learn to appreciate everything. Satya Sundar Mangalachi Nitya Ho Aradhana. Whatever is truth, Satya Shiv hai or Shiv hi Sundar hai. So that is what we need to understand. Okay, the next one. It means the pleasant, positive, or artful appearance of a person or a thing. Please try to understand. This is what is aesthetic. It means pleasant, positive, or artful appearance. How you present yourself, not with money, but with the way you present. And it is conforming to accepted notions of good taste. Please, aesthetic also is very social in nature. So you need to understand that whatever is confirmed by the society, that comes into the realm of aesthetics. Yes, let me give you a few examples. The first picture, please. Yeah. So when you look at this tree, you find that it is laden with fruits, it has got berries, it has got leaves, it has got greenery, and it soothes your eyes. Look at the other picture. Asanta, the next one. Yeah. Now, when you look at this tree, there are no leaves, there is no fruit, there is no greenery, but I'm sure you find it beautiful. If you try to find beauty in that, if you look at the beauty in that, even this tree is equally beautiful, provided you have the knowledge of aesthetics, provided you are able to appreciate things. So a tree which is barren, a tree which has no leaves, a tree which has no fruits can be equally beautiful. And this is what we want to instill in you, that please train your eyes to look at things which are absolutely beautiful. The next picture, please. Okay, so you see a river which is blue in color, absolutely beautiful, soothing your eyes. You feel like taking a plunge. The other picture. Of course, there is no water. Absolutely, just there is no water. So we need to take care that unless and until you learn to appreciate even this river, it does not make any sense. It does not make any sense. So you have to understand that a river without water can also look absolutely beautiful, can also look beautiful, and you have to take care of the same thing and make sure that you have an eye that is trained to look at, like this river which is not full of water, but you have to train your eyes. The next one. Oh wow, this one is Deepika Padukone. I'm sure she's an icon of many young generation. Many girls would like to become like her. Absolutely, she's beautiful, no doubt about it. Nothing is challenging. But if you look at the other picture on the right side, you must have an eye which should also look beauty in this woman. who's tribal. Maybe she's not used any makeup. Maybe she doesn't have an hairstylist. Maybe her ornaments are all rudimentary. But we need to understand and take care that you have to train your eyes for the same. The next picture, please. Oh, wow. This is a Cartier diamond, which costs in some 75 lakhs. This is beautiful. There is no doubt about it. It is beautiful. That is. But if you look on the other side, this is just a simple terracotta, jewelry, which we need to appreciate equally well. Though there is very little like money being spent, but you must have an eye and taste to even appreciate this. And this is what is the theme of the seminar today. The next one, please. Oh, wow. Anybody would fall in love with this child just because she looks beautiful. She has got a fair skin, but you must also learn to appreciate the other child, which has got $1 million smile. Her smile and the smile on the left is equally good. But the only thing is we tend to ignore the right hand side and we tend to promote the left hand side. And this is what we want to change after the workshop today. This is what we are trying to say. The next one, please, Asamta. Oh, wow. A dress, which has been taken from, I think this is from some designer, this thing where mannequin, where I have just plucked it from there and, posted it here. It's a very beautiful dress, maybe of some $20,000 American dollars. We have this piece of cloth. But if you look on the left-hand side, those are very rudimentary clothes being woven at home, on the loom, using vegetable colors and dyes. We should also learn to appreciate this beauty. The left-hand side is beautiful, absolutely. If you buy that, do buy. But do give, please, nazar-e-inayat idhar bhi kijiye. Learn to appreciate this cloth, this piece of garment, which is equally beautiful. Though it doesn't have bling, it doesn't have zing, but it is beautiful. And this is what is the meaning of developing aesthetics. The next slide, please. Yeah, so benefit of an aesthetic education is a way of regaining touch with the process of learning something new, of being noticed to a medium never known in a particular way before. It is incorporation of arts across the curriculum in a way that fosters a heightened awareness of and appreciation for all that touches our lives. Next one, please, Asamta. Since aesthetic quality is an aspect of all activity, perception and intelligent thought, aesthetic education helps students discover new ways of looking at, listening to, moving in and speaking of their everyday experiences. And since aesthetic quality is concentrated in the arts, the study of music, dance, drama, and the visual arts, most directly develops aesthetic awareness. The next slide, please. Aesthetic education opens up areas of learning too, seldom experienced in school and college. The power of a work of art to transform children and teacher, the partnership of students and teachers sharing insights, the challenge of taking risks to ask open-ended questions, the excitement of learning to express oneself in new ways, the self-esteem gained from the experiences that teach self-respect and mutual respect, and the exploration of a broad range of human relationships. This is what aesthetic education tends to. It is the opportunity to combine mind, cognition, and sensory experiences, analysis, and intuition towards understanding something as a whole. So when you look at the child's smile, you look at that person whole. If you look at the children who are, or the tree which doesn't have leaf, you look at the tree as a whole. That eyesight, that way of looking is extremely important. And let me tell you, my friends, since you are all being bogged down about music from Bollywood, which is absolutely nonsense, dresses which have got exorbitant prices, you all tend to get attracted to things which are beautiful, but you tend to ignore many things which are extremely beautiful in life, and you don't tend to pay attention. And our whole endeavor today is to make you look at the other side of the picture, which you otherwise tend to ignore. You tend to recognize, you tend not to take cognizance of what you are doing. So we need to understand, that that is how aesthetics makes our life very very meaningful. It makes us prosper, it makes us grow. हमारी जिंदगी में चार चांद लगाने के लिए एस्थेटिक्स का होना निहायत जरूरी है। और अगर आपके पास एस्थेटिक नहीं है तो आपके पास सिर्फ शोर है, आपके पास सिर्फ भीड़ है, आपके पास सिर्फ चीजों को जमा करने का जुनून है, लेकिन आपको जिंदगी एंजॉय करने में बहुत तकलीफ होती है. So that is why today aesthetics. Now may I request my co-organizer Hina Ben, who's been there with me from day one, to welcome formally our guest, our young little budding talent, Vaidehi Sagnal. Hina madam, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sabya ma'am. Welcome one and all, and respected Judy ma'am and my principal, Dr. Leena Raji. I am honored and lucky to have the opportunity to give introduction today's webinar, a very eminent speaker. किसी सुंदर कविता की पंक्तियां है, बिखेर देती है वसुंधरा मोती, सबके सोने पर रवि बटोर देता है उनका सदा सवेरा होने पर, और विरहदामिनी अपनी संध्या को दे जाती है शून्य श्याम तनु, जिसका उसका नया रूप झलकता है. मैथिली शरण गुप्ते. If we look at the above 4 lines, we can find a very lovely explanation of the nature. It's a secret and various work of nature. For pen downing such a beautiful line, one must have beautiful thought process as well as beautiful mind and heart. Mostly, beauty is everywhere in the world, and it is a part of parcel of life. Many people give so much importance to beauty, and some don't feel to give such an importance. Beauty, but those who don't give importance beauty as sure in means a lot of things is general and a few things impartial. Actually, no one in the world is apart from the beauty of everything. Beauty is a necessary of human lives. It is an essential integration. Today, to make us alert and aware about this essential integration, we have with us Ms. Vaidehi Sagnal, whose whole life overall around finding a beauty, preventing a beauty, and promoting a beauty. Vaidehi ma'am is the assistant for international relationship and in charge education, has been worked with Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya since 2011. Her role involves lines and building partnership with international and Indian Culture Institute through collaboration projects, including exhibition, research project, capacity building, and skill sharing programs. Alongside her role is designing and developing the museum's academic programs. Vaidehi ma'am leads the Children's Museum and Museum on Wheels, invites and its faculty and part of the course curriculum team for the postgraduate diploma course in museology and cryptography. She has been involved in infrastructure and development projects, publishing, and special exhibitions. She created the exhibitions. What is in name? The display Shakespeare's first folio at the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya on loan from the British Library. Who created the exhibition Twins Tips through the lens of Life Gautami, and recently created an exhibition for children ethics, the story of human and animals. She has a train at the British Museum, London, and at the Wellcome Trust, London. Uh, um, Vaidehi ma'am is a text speaker having a deliver a talk explaining nourishing for the exhibition India and the World, a history in 9 stories. Ma'am, we welcome to our collaborative efforts to both of the colleges and lead our students to trade your eyes, heart, and hand to identify beauty, appreciate beauty, and make their lives colorful, meaningful, and vibrant. Our students are eager to listen to you. So here is the session handing over to you. Welcome, ma'am, once again, and thank you. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, you're mute.
Sabya ma'am, you're on mute.
Okay, Vaidehi ma'am, welcome. The students are eager to listen to you. Thank you very much for being with us. May you please start the session. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the kind words. And I'm very happy to be here speaking about the museum today. As a museum professional, I think every opportunity to interact with people, talk to them about the museum and the collections we have is always a pleasure for us. And I really hope this session is useful. And hopefully, once we're through this pandemic, we'd get to see your students at the museum one day. So I will just begin my PPT. If it's all right, I'll switch off my video so it buffers properly. And I also think it might be a good idea if any of you have questions along the way, if you could just type it in the chat box and leave it so I can get back to it at an appropriate time. And I think Professor More, we've left time at the end for a Q&A, right? So we can take them up then. Okay, thank you. I'll just begin. Is this visible to everyone? So today's session, I'll begin by giving you an overview of what a museum is essentially, and take you through different stages in the evolution of a museum. And then we look at different aspects of aesthetics and look at aesthetics from different points of view through museum collections. And these collections will be spanning um, several countries from around the world, because our museum has collections from all over. We've got collections from different points of time. So through the lens of all of these objects, we look at various aspects of aesthetics. Now, the word museum comes from the Latin word museum, which is a place for learned occupation, and the Greek museus, or the muses. Now, if you're wondering what the muses are, the muses were the daughters of the Greek king of the gods, Zeus, and his wife, Nemephone, and she was the goddess of memory. So these are the 9 muses, and they lived on this beautiful mountain called Helicon. And you see the painting behind. You'd see the 9 goddesses there. Um, these goddesses were all ascribed to be associated with a particular form of the arts. So Calliope was a muse of epic poetry, Clio was a muse of history, Erato was a muse of love poetry, Euterpe was a muse of music, Melpomene was a muse of tragedy, Polyhymnia was a muse of sacred poetry, Terpsichore was the muse of dance, Thalia was the muse of comedy, and Urania was the muse of astronomy. So, as you can see, the idea of the word museum itself encompasses so many different forms of art, both in the natural world as well as the man made world. And it covers different aspects, right from language to poetry to aesthetics and so many different areas. So, today we'll glance upon different aspects that make up these muses. So the earliest idea of a museum, I mean, people have always been interested in aesthetics and beauty since time immemorial, and you would have seen paintings from dating back from very ancient periods where people found the need to express themselves. So right from the cave paintings that existed, people have always had this deep-seated interest towards beauty and aesthetic. Now, through time, I think a lot of kings, a lot of courtiers, people of rank, they used to collect art and decorate their homes with it. And it was a show of status in society to be able to procure all of these beautiful artworks and have them on show for people to see. But the earliest instance of a museum in the traditional sense of the term is the idea of cabinet of curiosities. Now, here is a print of the Cabinet of Curiosity of Ole Worm from the 17th century. He was a Danish professor, physician, antiquarian, and natural historian. Now, he collected, because he was a natural historian, he primarily collected a lot of natural history specimens. So, a lot of very rare species of animals and birds, you'll find them all depicted in this little cabinet of his, as well as things that he found on archaeological digs, little objects of art, decorative pieces. And these cabinets of curiosities were literally cabinets. They were little cupboards in people's homes where they used to keep all of these. And slowly, this idea expanded to fill a room. And the first museum in the modern sense was the Ashmolean Museum, which was formed from the collection of Elias Ashmole. And it was his cabinet of curiosities that he gifted to the Oxford University. And they built this entire huge building to house these collections. So, what you see here is a very old photograph of the Ashmolean Museum. And you'll see very antiquated approach towards displaying collections. There are these beautiful showcases where lots of objects are all just placed together. And the idea then was to be able to show people as much as was possible. So, whatever they had in their collections, people used to put on display with very little information about what these objects were. So, it was more about a visual experience where people would go through this entire museum and just looking at these objects and sort of deriving their own ideas or inspiration from looking at them. The first museum in India was the Indian Museum in Kolkata, which has, I think, one of the richest collections in the country. And it covers different kinds of subjects. You've got everything from natural history to sculptures and paintings. I believe they even have an Egyptian mummy. So they have a wide variety of objects. And this was the first museum in India. Now, the International Council of Museums is an international governing body, which it's where you have museums that are affiliated to it. And in 2007, this was the definition of the museum that they came up with. They said that a museum is a non-profit permanent institution in the service of society and its development, open to the public, which acquires, conserves, researches, communicates, and exhibits the tangible and the intangible heritage of humanity and its environment for the purposes of education, study, and enjoyment. Now, this definition fits in very well with what museums have been doing thus far, and it really summed up all the operations of a museum and why it exists. But over the last few years, there's been a huge increased awareness about who we are as people, our sense of belonging, our sense of identity. And museum professionals around the world felt that it was very important to recast this definition of what a museum is in a modern sense. So in 2019, the ICOM adopted a new definition of the museum, which says museums are democratizing, inclusive, and polyphonic spaces for critical dialogue about the past and the future, acknowledging and addressing the conflicts and challenges of the present. They hold artifacts and specimens in trust for society, safeguard diverse memories for future generations, and guarantee equal rights and equal access to heritage for all people. Museums are not for profit, they are participatory and transparent and work in active partnership with and for diverse communities to collect, preserve, research, interpret, exhibit, and enhance understanding of the world, aiming to contribute to human dignity and social justice, global equality, and planetary well being. And I think here is a museum, a picture of our museum, which I feel really sums up this idea of what a new museum should be. What you see here in the picture is this little girl with her grandfather. They're going through some of the sculptures in our museum. And a museum in today's world is all about sharing. It's about interconnectedness. It's about, connecting between ages, between different kinds of people and communities. And I really think this photograph sort of sums up what the idea of a museum should be. And taking our work as a museum one step further is the City CSMVS Museum on Wheels, which is essentially a bus that we have converted to carry traveling exhibitions to people. And this bus travels through all of Mumbai, the suburbs, rural areas of Maharashtra, and even nearby states. And given the pandemic and the fact that this bus actually can't move at present, we have decided to connect with people in different ways, and our session today is one of the ways in which we're hoping to reach out to people. A little bit about our museum before we begin. We've got collections, like I said, that are very diverse. It spans times right from prehistory to the contemporary period. We've got galleries for sculptures, for textiles, for arms and armor, for coins, for jewelry, textiles. We've got lots of foreign antiquities in our museum, which is quite rare for a museum in India. We were very fortunate to have a bequest from very prominent collectors who left us large numbers of foreign antiquities. So that will give us a chance today to explore some very different world cultures through the lens of aesthetics. Now, to begin formally with the idea of aesthetics, I thought we should begin with the idea of aesthetics when you look at it from the point of view of function. Now, aesthetics exists in everything around us, and I think a wonderful place to begin is the museum building itself. So our museum building is, it's been created in the architectural style called the Indo-Saracenic style. And this is a style that makes use of various different forms of architecture, including Hindu architecture, Islamic architecture. We have a lot of European influences, as well as a lot of local architectural practices from around the country. And I think this makes for an excellent, very secular, space as a space in itself. And here are a few pictures of the interior of the museum. You will see these beautiful arches that define the museum. And these arches are very reminiscent of Mughal architecture. The dome of the museum itself has been inspired by the Gol Gumbaz. And we have a lot of beautiful lattice work, a lot of jalis, which draw from Rajasthani architecture. We've got a whole lot of woodwork. If you look at this, all of these wooden railings that you see here, they were incorporated from a Wada in Nasik that was being dismantled. And that was incorporated into the architecture of the building by the architect. The architect of the building was George Whitted. He was a Scottish architect, and he's also known for building the Gateway of India in Mumbai. And he was able to bring together all of these different aspects of architecture. The idea behind building this museum was that there were a lot of prominent citizens in Mumbai, including people like Dadabai Naurozi, Badruddin Taibji, lots of prominent citizens who came together and felt that they needed one central space that could house artifacts where the general public could come in and appreciate, the art of humanity as a civilization and how we've come a long way. And the building itself was always intended to be a museum, and the architecture of the museum really supports this concept. Now, going forward, let's look at a few other examples of the idea of aesthetics and function. Here is an armor which is ascribed to Emperor Akbar. Now, this is the form of a cuirass armor, which consists of a breastplate, a backplate. It's got two arm guards and a helmet. Now, what makes this armor particularly unique? If you look at the front, it's got a little throat, a collar at the throat, which was quite unique in a sense that regular armor makers in India did not make provision for this little piece. And this is really important because it protects the neck of a person going into battle. What you see here, they're very tiny, but two little cylinders that you see here are where the plumes would have been placed. So an emperor would have the feathers of different birds that they would carry here while they were going into battle. And these were symbolic of the royal status of the king. The entire armor has been very beautifully damascened. Now, damascened is a technique where gold filigree is incorporated into the metalwork of the armor. And if you see, there are some inscriptions that you can see on the breastplate here. And these are verses from the Quran, which reads, O Allah, O Muhammad, help from God and speedy victory. Now, the reason they have inscribed verses like this, and you will find this on many different types of armor, on different kinds of weapons and shields, is because everybody would walk into battle with the name of God on their lips. And you will find this across religions, across different belief systems, that they would, the personal, the God or, the divine entity that the person carrying this would believe in, that would be inscribed very often on these pieces. But how do we know that this armor belonged to Emperor Akbar? The Ain-e-Akbari is a biography which was penned, which chronicles the life of Emperor Akbar, and it makes several mentions of the word khas, khas as in the word special. They talk about khas swords and guns, even khas elephants and horses that were used exclusively by the king. Now, the inscription near the collar that you see, it reads, Perhan-e Khas-e Buland, Iqbal Shahinshah Akbar Ghazi, which means the personal garment of the emperor of lofty fortune Akbar. And this inclusion and the reference of the word khas illuminates the fact that it was intended for the emperor's use. Such calligraphy was usually done by craftsmen, by a master calligrapher, but in this case, we are not sure about the identity of the scribe. What we do know, though, is that Emperor Akbar, he personally supervised the making of all of his armor, his shields, and his weapons. And the breastplate and the detail in which it has been made indicates that this would have been used using a model of the emperor's torso. So when you look at this breastplate, you can imagine what the emperor would have looked like. You know how bulky he would have been because he was a warrior. And you can just imagine him wearing this armor and going out into war. Up next, we have what is called a Tipu hilt. Now, Tipu Sultan was called the Tiger of Mysore, and he used tiger emblems on weapons and other royal objects. A tiger-headed hilt therefore came to be known as a Tipu hilt. If you see here, the pommel, the quillon, the square are all in the shape of a roaring tiger, as are the cross pieces at the end. So if you see here, you've got tiger motifs running all along this beautiful sword. The inscription on this hilt in Arabic is dated to the Islamic calendar of 1148, which is about 1740 CE. This sword too has an inscription which reads, I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent and the Merciful. Now, from the type of decoration and the date, it is possible that this sword may have actually been made for Tipu Sultan, and this has been gathered by comparing it to a sword which is almost identical, which is now part of the royal collection at Windsor Castle. And that particular sword was found on Tipu Sultan's person during the last battle of Srirangapatnam. Now, taking the idea of warfare a little further, you have here a barutdan. Now, by the time we reach the 17th century, guns and gunpowder were in use in battle. And this particular gunpowder flask is made of elephant's tusk. Now, elephant's tusk is naturally hollow, and the carver who made this employed the fact that the tusk itself was hollow, they used that to create this beautiful shape of a leaping antelope. Even the curve of the tusk has been employed in creating this beautiful leaping antelope. But if you look at it quite closely, it's devoid of too much decoration. But the antelope is depicted with its lips slightly parted and its eyes wide open with anxiety. Now, this reflects the concept, with which this piece was made. The nobility of this period, they indulged extensively in hunting this very animal. And you can just imagine that, the fact that ivory was used to create this piece of beauty, it's so much in contrast, such a beautiful object. And the way the ivory would have been procured, they're quite in contrast to each other if you think about it. Now, in terms of function, everybody wears clothes. So cloth is a highly functional item. But what sets these little fabric pieces apart are that they were excavated in Egypt. Now, Indian textiles were exported to Egypt right from the Roman times. And these pieces were discovered near Fustat, which is near modern Cairo. Research has revealed that they were made in Gujarat in Western India. And most of these block printed textiles, they reached Egypt between the 11th and 16th centuries, when Arabs and Indians were both actively trading across the Indian Ocean. Now, if you look very closely at the motifs on these textile pieces, you'll realize that they are very familiar. And this practice is prevalent even today in the textiles in this region. And it talks about the long history that textile making has had in this region. In terms of function, now let's move to a completely different place. Let's go to Japan. And here we've got a set of netsuke and inro. Now, netsuke and inro were a very integral part of Japanese fashion right from the 17th century. If they served a very functional purpose. So the kimonos that were worn by men, they did not have pockets. So what they did was they made these little boxes, stacked boxes, to carry everyday items like medicines, tobacco, and stamps. A sash called the obi, and you'll see it here in the picture. This was used to hold the kimono in place, and this box here is the inro. It was suspended using a cord, and this little piece at the top called a netsuke is what anchored the whole inro in place. Now, early netsuke were quite simple in shape, but over the 18th century, they became a fashion statement. And new designs were being created, which included mythological characters, religious subjects, zodiac animals, samurai, literary heroes, different kinds of subjects, and different occasions called for special attire. And netsuke and inro would be chosen to match the outfit. Now, what you see here, this little cord would open up to reveal each of these boxes. You'll see one box here, 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 and here. And each of them would have a little bit of whatever the person was carrying. And this bead would be used to keep the box shut. Now, moving on, let's talk about aesthetics and belief. Now, I think religions around the world and different forms of belief systems have always created objects of beauty to help a person to concentrate or to focus their spiritual, their beliefs, their prayer. And what you see here is a panel from a temple in Aihole. So Aihole in the Bagalkot district of Karnataka is a place where, which is the earliest capital of the Chalukyas. The Chalukyas were rulers in this region in about the 7th century, and they built a huge temple complex with over 100 temples, which were Hindu, several temples that were Jain, and even one Buddhist temple. Again, it talks about the secularity of the rulers. And what you see here is a ceiling slab from a temple called the Hachapayagodi temple. And this is an image of Brahma. Now, what's particularly beautiful about it is that the idea that when you walk into a temple, you're completely surrounded by depictions of the divine. It creates an atmosphere of devotion and of focus. And if you think about it, it's true of, I think, every religion. And a visit to a religious space really engages all your senses. Now, here we've got sculptures of Hanuman and Sambandar. Now, when you think of a bronze sculpture, I'm quite sure that the first image that comes to your mind is one of Nataraj. And that's a very famous piece that you would find in almost every collection. But we've got two very special little bronze sculptures here. On the left, you have a sculpture of Hanuman. And it's quite rare that you would see a sculpture of Hanuman on his own because he is usually depicted with Ram, Lakshman, and Sita. But Hanuman, actually in India, is the focus of very widespread worship as the remover of difficulties. So this is a form of Hanuman called Sankat Mochan, and it is believed that this piece may have been part of a larger group of sculptures which would have included Ram, Lakshman, and Sita. But when we talk about the idea of beliefs, it's not always limited to a god or a form of divinity. Who the sculpture you have on the right is that of Sambandar. Now, Sambandar was a poet saint, a bhakti poet saint from Tamil Nadu, who was a Shaivite. He was a child prodigy. He lived only 16 years, but he was very accomplished and he composed 16,000 hymns in praise of Shiva. And he's considered one of the most prominent of the 63 Nayanars. Now, this 900-year-old Chola bronze is modeled much like the image of a dancing Balakrishna. And what makes him identifiable is his distinct feature where he has his index finger pointing upwards. But what is truly remarkable when you look at this sculpture is these sculptures are made of pure metal. You can imagine how heavy they must be. The fact that a sculpture has a sculptor so beautifully proportioned this sculpture so that the entire weight of the sculpture is focused on just that one tiny foot. But the way it has been made, the way the proportion has been created, uh, allows for this sculpture to stand very beautifully poised. Now we move on. You would have seen this picture on the first slide of my presentation. This is actually a plaque with Chintamani Lokeshwara, who is a Buddhist deity who is worshipped. And the word Chintamani means wish granting jewel. Now, brilliantly created, this plaque is made of a copper alloy and semi-precious stones. It's profusely embellished and it's a one-of-a-kind piece in our collection. In the center of the panel is the figure of Chintamani Lokeshwar. He's sculpted in crystal. And with every movement that you make as you walk around this plaque, the play of the light on this little figure, it looks different from every different aspect. One hand of this deity is in a gesture of offering refuge, and the other one holds the branch of a fabulous tree bearing jewels as its fruits. This sort of panel was propitiated in household shrines, and they were intended to fulfill the aesthetic as well as the spiritual desire of devotees. Now, this little sculpture is of Indra, and Indra was one of the most important Vedic deities who destroyed the Asuras, the demons, and the enemies of the gods. He was also invoked for favors, including sending rains. But in the later Hindu pantheon, he was demoted to the position of a guardian deity of the easterly direction, or one of the Ashtadikpals. His Vedic role as a god of rain, however, continued to be remembered in Nepal, where the annual festival of Indra, the Indra Yatra, is a nationally celebrated festival. In Buddhist mythology, Indra is credited with medicinal healing. This particular figure is quite unusual and unique as it is sitting in a disproportionately large slab of turquoise, creating a dazzling visual effect. The shape of the stone complements the posture of Indra, and it brings credit to the aesthetic sensibilities of the unknown Niwari craftsman who made this. Now, moving on, although many religions such as Christianity and Islam spread to India from elsewhere, India too exported many faiths. Now, this is obvious mostly in the case of Buddhism and Hinduism. In terms of Buddhism, the representations of Buddha, while following the principles of iconography as devised in India, were subsequently cast in the local style of the countries where they reached. So, depending on where this religion went, it would incorporate the local features of the people themselves. So, let's take a few of the examples of Buddha from our collection. The first figure which you see on the left is from the Buddhist stupa of Mirpur Khas in the province of Sindh in modern Pakistan. This sculpture of Buddha, you see him seated on a lotus in the Padmasan with his hands in a gesture of meditation. Now, if you look at him quite closely, his hair appears to be wavy rather than the curly locks which was associated with Indians. His robes are draped over both shoulders, while in India, usually when one wears robes, even to this day, the robes are usually worn only over the left shoulder. And if you look at his face, it's quite cherubic in form. Quite in contrast to this, you have the Buddha in the center. Now, this form of Buddha was used in Tibet and Mongolia, the entire region that makes up that area. And if you look at him here, his hair is decidedly curly. His robes, drawing influence from India, are over the left shoulder, and his face is quite square, much like the features of the people of this region. On the right, you have a figure of Buddha from Nagapattinam, which is in Tamil Nadu, and it provides important artistic evidence of Chinese and Southeast Asian connections with India. So it is believed that a Chinese king had constructed a stupa in India for Chinese traders who were coming here. And this depiction of Buddha, although he's, the form of Buddha standing on a double inverted lotus, while it's quite familiar, its rendering reveals foreign influences. Right from the depiction of his hands raised in the Abhaya and the Chintana Mudra, and even the features of his face have a decidedly Southeast Asian influence. So if you look at all the three faces of Buddha, they are the same deity, they are venerated by the same faith, they all have very, very different features. Now, when you look at objects, it's very difficult to try and imagine where they come from. So this was actually a sculpture of Maitreya Buddha that we had sculpted at the museum. This magnificent 6-foot tall clay sculpture was made by the clay sculptor Mr. Chemet Rigdon and his team that came from Ladakh. Now, they use the traditional techniques in the sculpting of this figure that have been passed down through centuries. This form of Buddha is venerated as the central deity in Buddhist temples, and you will see around this figure objects used in worship. You will see paintings, you will see musical instruments and scrolls, the same way that you would in a gompa. A gompa is essentially a meditation or a prayer room where around the central deity, arrangements are made for monks and other practitioners of Buddhism to sit and pray and meditate and listen to preachings. Now, moving on, we've got two paintings here of Madonna and Infant Jesus, which are very different in their appearance. So, on the left, you have a painting which is made in the Mughal miniature style. And it was in the Mughal period that there were several ambassadors that came from Europe to India, and they carried with them prints and paintings of various divinities. And looking at these prints, the local artists were quite inspired and they decided to represent these forms in their own traditional style. So if you see here, the entire setting of Madonna and Child is quite in contrast to the painting you see on the right. The painting on the right was made by an artist who was a disciple of Leonardo da Vinci. And this painting is very reminiscent of Madonna and on the rocks. And it's a very traditional form of depicting Madonna and Infant Jesus, very popular in Europe. But on the left, if you look at it, it's been entirely adopted into a very Indian style. And you will even find a little bindi on Madonna's forehead. So this also really talks about how there has been a very secular approach to religion through the centuries. Now, moving on, let's talk about the idea of aesthetics in the context of skill. Now, what we have here are snuff bottles. Now, snuff bottles, as the name implies, were little bottles designed to hold snuff, which is a preparation of powdered tobacco enhanced by spices. And this was snuff was introduced by European traders in the King Court of China in about the 17th century. It became very fashionable in the imperial court to carry these little bottles around. Now, while the earlier bottles were quite simple in form, with demand and popularity, they evolved into beautiful works of art. If you look on the top right, the little bottles that you see have painted landscapes and animal figures. Now, these bottles were made of glass and they have been painted from the inside. So you can imagine the skill of the artist who used a very, very fine brush and actually was able to paint this on the inside of the bottle. In contrast, you see another snuff bottle here, and this entire collection has depictions of different animals, insects, and birds. In Chinese mythology, different animals and birds, they were connected to different, they were either connected to ideas of prosperity, of wealth, of longevity, and different animals came to be depicted depending upon what the person who was carrying it wanted. Now, here is another beautiful specimen from our Far East collection. This is a dragon, and this dragon has been made in the form. It's called jizai. Now, what happened was there were huge guilds, families of armor makers and metal workers who were actively involved in making armor, shields, swords, and different kinds of accessories to weapons for the samurai clans that lived in Japan. Now, with the Meiji Restoration, which took place, there was an era of peace, that came about, and the demand for such armor and weaponry that decreased. But they had this beautiful skill. They had the skill of working with metal, and they decided to turn this skill into making objects of beauty. So the skill that they had in the manufacture of flexible armor, this was what they used in employing. They employed it into making animals such as this dragon. They made other fanciful creatures. They made snakes. They've made birds, and the idea that the riveting techniques that they had in plating, in putting together plates of armor, is how they made this piece, this jizai. And what's really interesting about it is that this piece can move. So each of these scales that you see here has been individually riveted together, and this dragon can take any shape that you want it to. So what I've done is I've put together a few pictures to show you the different positions that this dragon can take, and it's completely flexible. Here is another form of sculpture called okimono. Now, okimono is a Japanese term which means object for display and included objects of art used in decoration. They were displayed in a little place called a tokonoma in the house, which is a little alcove where they had paintings, pottery, and flower arrangements that could also be placed. Now, this particular okimono is actually very, very tiny in size. It's only about 10 inches, if you were to think about it. And look at the amount of detailing that this artist has put in. So this piece is made entirely out of ivory. And here I've blown up a little portion of this okimono, and you will see how beautifully they've replicated textures, right from the features of each person's face, the garments that they are wearing. You can see the creases and the folds in their clothes. Here, this is a stone mortar and pestle. You can see the, the details of the stone. This is a screen that would have been made perhaps of bamboo. You can see how each individual piece of bamboo has been incorporated. Even the roof here, if you see, this would have been a straw roof. So you can see how individually each, piece of straw has been so beautifully replicated by this artist. Now, coming back to India, you would have, I'm sure, heard of artists, famous artists from all over the world like Leonardo da Vinci and Vincent van Gogh. But India also produced a huge set of master artists. This particular artist in question, his name was Nayan Sukh, and he was a court painter of the Rajput king Raja Balwant Singh. He was commissioned by the king over a period of almost 20 years. And what really sets his paintings apart was that he captured the everyday life of the king. So if you think about the different kinds of paintings of kings you would have seen, you would have usually seen them in a very stately portrait, with their weapons, or you'd see them in a court scene with all their courtiers. You'd see them maybe in a battle scene. But what's really different is the painting on the left here is one where Raja Balwant Singh is having his beard trimmed. Now, if you look at him quite closely, you'll see that he looks quite focused in his efforts. His eyes are closed, his hands are crossed, and he's waiting very patiently while this barber is trimming his beard. The king himself is depicted with very simple clothes. So this would indicate that the king is, at leisure while this barber is trimming his beard, while the barber is wearing clothes that are quite intricate. So for the barber, this was a very important moment when he was given a chance to trim the beard of the king. And if you look at the barber's face, his face is also in deep concentration as he's trimming the beard. On the right, you will see a portrait of the king while he's writing a letter. And below, you will see a portrait of the king while they were traveling. He's seated in his tent. And here you'll notice that the king is devoid of his royal robes. This is not something that a regular artist would be able to, recreate, because an artist was usually called when the king was entirely decked up in his, in his regal form. This was a very informal setting, and only Naensuk was able to capture such a moment because he was so closely associated with this king. Now, moving on, we talk about the idea of aesthetics and expression, and how people through time, whether they were lay people, whether they were kings, have always felt a need to express their personal aesthetic. So the first sculpture we have here, and I thought this is a great example of the work that a museum does. This figure is of Thirumala Nayaka, who was a Nayaka king of the Vijayanagar Empire. Now, he was one of the most prominent kings of this dynasty. And if you look at his sculpture, when it originally came to the museum, the sculpture is what it looked like on the left. Now, it was with the painstaking efforts of the museum's conservators that they were able to restore this piece to its former glory. And you can really see the details, whether it's in the king's expression, whether it was in his body, the ornaments that he's wearing, or the clothes that he's wearing. And it is a very beautiful depiction because it talks about who this king was, about what he wore, about his sense of aesthetics, about his sense of style. And here we've got something quite in contrast. These are beads that were found in the Harappan civilization. Now, a large number of beads and ornamental objects have been found at various Harappan sites. They were worn both by men and women, as can be seen in the profuse ornamentation on figures found at these sites. So this figure of the mother goddess, this figure of the priest king, these are very popular figures that you would be able to recognize. They all have different kinds of decoration that talk about the ornamentation of people from back then. Now, these beads were made of a variety of shapes, from a variety of semi-precious stones, including carnelian, agate, serpentine, jasper, lapis lazuli, turquoise, amethyst. And they also have been found in various other civilizations, contemporary civilizations in other parts of the world, that talk about the thriving trade relations that the Harappan civilization had with other countries and how coveted this jewelry was in other parts of the world. And on the right, top right here, you have a figure of the dancing girl. Now, I think the dancing girl is one of the most popular, depictions from the Harappan civilization, a figure that you almost immediately recognize. You'll find it in every history textbook. But the period when this sculpture was unearthed, she was immediately ascribed to be a dancing girl, because all female forms that were found in this period, this is almost 200 years ago when it would have been found, they were either ascribed to be a mother goddess, where a woman was considered as a center of worship, or she was considered the dancing girl. But since then, researchers have wondered about what the true meaning of the sculpture would be. And a very interesting conclusion that modern researchers have found is that if you look at her figure, Her left arm has bangles all the way from her wrist up to way past her elbow, but her right arm is bare just for two single bangles. So it makes one wonder if this right arm, which would have been her working arm, would have been left free for her to be able to work, and whether she could have been perhaps, a shepherdess, or even a security woman for that matter, because the way her arm is placed, you feel that there may have been a staff present in her hand. And it talks about the idea that women may not necessarily have been, they didn't have to necessarily be looked at from the point of view of a mother goddess or from the point of view of a person who works with entertainment in that sense. And a woman could have been a very strong person with a very strong personality even back then. Now, here we come to a more traditional form of jewelry, and this is a Mangamalai, which is found in South India. And ornaments actually, they express different kinds of narratives. It can indicate caste, social status. It can be evocative of femininity, fertility, protection. They can even mark the rite of passage in life. So various at various points in life, a person is presented with different kinds of jewelry to denote a particular age, or an age of becoming. And what's particularly interesting that in Indian jewelry, they stimulate acupressure points located at the ears, the nose, the neck, and the toes. In contrast to this is this set of jewelry, a pair of earrings and a pendant that was worn by Nana Fadnis. So this is really interesting because when we think of jewelry, we automatically think of it in terms of a woman's ornamentation, that a woman is interested in wearing jewelry, or we tend to completely delineate the fact that men may also want to dress up, they may also want to represent their sense of aesthetics. And I feel this is a very beautiful pair of earrings and pendant. Now, this is a coin which was of Chandragupta II from the Gupta dynasty. Now, coins are some of the best sources in constructing the history of a particular time. They not only tell you about the economy and monetary systems, those are very obvious conclusions you would draw, but they also tell you about the flora, the fauna, the belief systems, languages that people spoke, fashion trends, religious beliefs. There's just so much you can derive. If you look very closely at the Gupta coins, they have many such elements. Um, the Gupta kings, they ruled from modern day Patna, and the coins that they minted are a tribute to their multifaceted personalities. So they depicted themselves engaged in various martial as well as artistic activities. So you will see them in scenes of hunting, you see them playing musical instruments, you see them depicted with their consorts. And this particular coin that you see here has Chandragupta on the left as a lion slayer. So it's him wanting to portray to his people that he was a brave, valiant king who could even defeat a lion in combat. And on the right, the other side of this coin has a depiction of goddess Lakshmi. Now, this is particularly beautiful because the Gupta kings, um, they sort of resurrected the Vedic religion, because for a long time people had been actively practicing Buddhism in various parts of the country. And while the Gupta kings were very secular, their personal beliefs were those of the Vedic religion. And what's interesting is the depiction of goddess Lakshmi, because right, if you think about it, right from the 3rd century up until contemporary times, goddess Lakshmi is considered as a goddess of wealth. Now, moving on, here is another beautiful idea of the aesthetics of expression. The Indian independence movement is something that we've all learned about through stories passed down from generations, through books and films and songs. This particular object is a sari, and this sari takes us into the lives of the people who lived in this period. If you look at it very closely, each of these motifs has the word Vande Mataram has woven into it, and it expresses the patriotism of the wearer. Each of these star-shaped motifs all over are in gold and silver zari, and the slogan Vande Mataram is woven in green and maroon, and through the sari as well as this beautiful pallu. And now this is actually a very different object. This is a scepter. It's called a rui, and it's something that was used in Chinese culture. Now, Chinese culture viewed jade as a symbol of luxury. And there's a very popular Chinese phrase which says, gold has value, but jade is invaluable. Now, what is jade? Jade is a metamorphic rock, and it is found in different colors depending on the mineral composition. Now, this particular scepter, a rui is a wish granting scepter, and such scepters were presented as gifts to emperors and empresses and even courtiers of very high rank. Now, depending upon the symbols that are carved on the scepter, you would know what occasion it was presented to a person. Now, this particular scepter has the designs of the fungus of immortality, a peach tree, bamboo, and narcissus. And together, if you look at all of these motifs, they represent the phrase, the heavenly immortals bring birthday greetings. So this particular scepter was a birthday gift. Now, let's talk about the idea of aesthetics and language. So here is a painting of a Naika. Now, the moods of a heroine or a Naika are extensively described and illustrated in Indian literature and art. Now, in this particular painting, it's a representation from the Riti Kavya, which was a form of court poetry which was prevalent in medieval India, where it basically transforms Krishna and Radha as the Nayaka and the Nayika, the main characteristics of this painting. Now, this Nayika, she has decked herself up in her favorite jewelry, and she has reached the place where she has decided to meet her beloved. She has prepared a beautiful bed of banyan leaves in one corner, and in the moonlit night, you can see the moon up here. She is waiting for her lover to come. Even the soft sound of the breeze on the leaves, and how do you know about this breeze? You can see all the branches moving. If you look at it, all of these branches seem as though they are almost in motion. So you know that there is a soft breeze playing. She's waiting for her beloved's arrival, but he does not show up. Now she is so upset that he does not come, and that she feels so insulted and rejected that you see her taking off all of these ornaments and throwing them away. The starry sky which you see above, the full moon, the swirling grayish black clouds, and the trees with drooping creepers are all witness to this drama of her pain and her agony. And on the reverse of this painting is a little verse which reads, this night, the Nayak being absorbed in some work of his did not come, whereas the flowers seemed to her darts, and perfume things with evil stank. Her house a parcher's oven seemed, gardens to fearful forests turned, like fever were the cool moonbeams, which all her body seemed to burn. Songs were abused, and beetle made looked to her as if poison were, and all 16 adornments appeared as if they were merely embers. Now here is another folio, this time from the Anwar-e Suheli. So the Anwar-e Suheli is a Persian translation of the Panchatantra. Now this particular manuscript was commissioned by Emperor Akbar for his young son Salim. Emperor Akbar was a remarkably secular person, and he encouraged his children, and in fact all his subjects, to be familiarized with the different belief systems that were prevalent then. Now, this particular painting is of the geese and the tortoise, which tells a story from the Panchatantra. It's a time of drought, and there was the pond where these geese and the tortoise lived had dried up. Now, the geese and the tortoise had known each other for a long time, and they were very good friends. When the pond dried up, the geese decided that it was time to move away in search for water. While they were deciding to part, the tortoise was very upset because his best friends were leaving, and they decided to take him along. And the way they decided to take him along was while they flew, they would hold a branch between their beaks, and they asked the tortoise to hold on to this branch with his mouth very tightly while they flew. Now, as they flew up into the air, the passers by, the humans that you see down, were quite amazed because everybody's seen flying geese, but no one had seen a flying tortoise. And they were so stunned that they started shouting words of praise. Now, this got the better of the tortoise's ego, and he wanted to tell them about who he was, and he opened his mouth to speak, and he fell to his death. Now, as you all know, the stories of the Panchatantra all carry with them a moral, and this is the moral of this story. But what is really notable is that Jahangir, who grew up listening to all of these stories, as he grew up, commissioned these beautiful animal studies from his atelier. And you find lots of very lifelike representations of birds and animals, flora and fauna both. And one wonders if this early exposure that Jahangir had to these beautiful paintings created this deep seated interest in him towards the natural world around him. And finally, we have this beautiful portrait of Emperor Shah Jahan. The portrait that you see on the left is from the Metropolitan Museum in New York. This was painted almost immediately after Shah Jahan was made emperor. You see that he's exquisitely dressed with richly adorned jewels, and his imperial rank is emphasized by this beautiful halo around his head and the hovering angels above, which are derived from European art. Even the setting all around him talks about the skills of different artisans who are employed by the Mughal court. Now, almost in contrast to this is the painting in the center, which is from our museum's collection, which shows Shah Jahan much later in his life during a period of his waning glory. You will see him devoid of his sword. Now, a sword in an emperor's hand usually denotes that an emperor is in charge of his dominions, right? And instead, he is shown holding a champaka flower, and this champaka flower talks about how he has, given up his royal responsibilities. In fact, at this point in time, he was imprisoned by his son Aurangzeb. And what's beautiful is the poetic verse which is written behind this painting. Now, this poetic verse is written in Kitta, which is a form of calligraphy, and it talks about uh, how Shah Jahan felt towards his son Aurangzeb, the feelings of pain and betrayal that he felt. And this poem reads, haven't you heard that a gourd twig under a chinar tree sprang up, ran up thereon within 20 days? It asked the chinar tree, how old are you? The chinar tree said, my age is more than 200 years. The gourd twig replied, within only 20 days, I have grown taller than you. Why is there this indolence and slowness in you? So the old chinar tree replies, oh, my friend, today I do not intend to have any contention. Tomorrow, when the autumnal winds blow over you and me, that is the time that it will become evident who is brave and who is a coward. Professor Sabiha, I just wanted to know if I can have maybe 10 minutes more to continue. I realize I'm overshooting a little bit.
You feel free, Vaidehi, to take 10 more minutes. It's okay. It's fine. We are enjoying it.
Okay. Now we come to the idea of aesthetics and historicity. Now, all this while, we have looked at objects that are decidedly very, very beautiful. When you look at them itself, you see there's so much to look at, so much to appreciate. But now we look at a few objects that when you look at them seem quite commonplace and might make you wonder about what the aesthetic in them really is. So what we have here is a brick that was found from Mohenjo-daro in the Harappan civilization. Now, the towns of the Harappan civilization were very functional and they sprung up on the banks of perennial rivers. These rivers gave them access to fresh water and they were able to settle into agriculture, and this led to the growth of an urban society. Now, bricks such as these were used to construct their buildings, which were laid out in a grid-like pattern. Buildings at the end of the roads had curved bricks to ensure that the carts which were in use could turn around them easily. Bricks were either sun-dried or fired, and stronger fired bricks were used in areas where there was more wear and tear, such as on the exterior of the buildings and the roads and even in the drainage systems. Now, these towns had advanced systems of drainage with water and waste from each building draining into the larger covered drains that ran along the streets from the outside, and fired bricks were used for this purpose. Now, what is remarkable is that across different towns, and the towns of the Harappan civilization spanned everywhere from modern day Pakistan through Punjab and Haryana in India, Rajasthan and Gujarat. So you can imagine the expanse of this civilization. But bricks from all the sites that were dotting the civilization, they are made with the same set of measurements. And this indicates a high degree of specialization and the possibility even of a brick making industry. Now we have here a little toy cart, again from one of the Harappan sites. Now Harappan cities had well-developed trade systems that connected them not just with cities of this civilization, but they had active links to civilizations around the world. These systems were reliant on rural agriculture, communities, and mines, and they had contact with important resource producing areas. Now, pack animals, riverboats, and carts were used for transport. The different types of Harappan model carts indicate differentiation based on function. While some, such as these carts, were designed to carry heavy loads, others were made for passengers and they were designed for speed. Now, if you look at this particular toy cart, what is really distinctive about its form is that it has remained largely unchanged in form over millennia. And if you look at rural parts of India, carts such as these are employed even today. And here we have an inscription of Emperor Ashoka, the Mauryan emperor. Now, what set Emperor Ashoka's inscriptions apart was that this was the first time that a ruler tried to unify his subjects by promoting ideas of peace and ethical conduct. Most importantly, he chose to use the language and script of the common people. Now, this particular inscription was found near Nala Sopara in Mumbai, which was a port town back in the day called Sopara. Now, Emperor Ashoka had his capital city at Patliputra, which is modern day Patna, but you can see how far his influence had spread. Now, this particular inscription is very beautiful because it talks about the ideals of the emperor. It says that men perform various ceremonies in their lifetime during illnesses, during the marriage of a son or a daughter, at the birth of a child, while setting out on a journey, and many such occasions. But while these ceremonies should be performed, they bear very little fruit. What would bear greater fruit is the practice of morality, including proper courtesy to slaves and servants, reverence to elders, gentleness to animals, and liberality to brahmanas and shramanas. And if you think about it, this king lived almost 2000 years ago, but these values which he spoke about then are so important even in today's world. Now we move on to the idea of aesthetics and nature. Right at the beginning, I talked about how aesthetics exists in the world around us, and we started off by looking at aesthetics from the point of view of architecture of the museum building. But now we look at aesthetics from the point of view of nature. What we have here are two beautiful specimens of hornbills from the museum's collection. Now, hornbills are remarkable birds. They are found in the entire Indian subcontinent. On the left, you have what is called the pied hornbill or the Great Indian hornbill. And these are among the larger species that are found in the Indian subcontinent. Now, what sets the hornbills apart is that they have very strong family ethics. Hornbills are known to mate for life, and when they are ready to raise their offspring, what they do is they build a nest in the hollow of a tree. In the museum, what we've done is recreated this entire scene in the hollow of a tree. What they do is they line this hollow with leaves and with twigs, and they create this beautiful nest. When it is time for the female to lay the egg, she goes into the nest, and the male hornbill, he completely covers the hollow from outside. He packs it with mud. leaving only a little opening, just enough for his beak to go inside so he can give her food. Now, what happens is that when the female is inside, she molts all her feathers, she sheds all of her feathers, and these feathers form a soft cushioning for the nest so that when her eggs hatch and when the young ones are born, they have a very comfortable nest to sit in. If you just look at the beauty of this relationship of trust, because the female, she is literally locked away into this nest for until the entire time that it takes for her offspring to reach maturity, and it is entirely the male's responsibility to bring her and the young ones food. Once the young ones are at an age where they are able to protect themselves, both the female and the male with their beaks, they break this little mud covering open, and then they're all out into the world free again. On the other side, you have this little hornbill, which is the smallest species of hornbill, and it is found in the Andaman Islands on a little island called Narkondam. And this particular species is only found on this island, which is why they're called the Narkondam hornbill. Now, the reason I've highlighted this particular hornbill is because they've lived a largely undisturbed life, because this particular island has not been occupied much, and they've lived quite peacefully. But what happened was, some settlers on nearby islands, they introduced goats on this island, and now these goats went feral and they started foraging for food all over the island. And what's interesting is the food that these goats ate and the food that these hornbills eat is the same. So suddenly these tiny little birds, and these birds, they are maybe just a foot in height, they had to compete against these goats for their food. And due to a decline in their natural food sources, there was also a decline in the population of these birds. But also, very sadly, this region has become prone to tsunamis and cyclones because as an effect of global warming. And that's really sad because, while human interference may not be direct on this island, as a result of the way we are living in this world and the lives of excess that we live, little birds like these are being harmed. And here we've got another specimen. This is a white Bengal tiger from the museum's collection, and she has a very interesting backstory. So in about the 1950s in Madhya Pradesh, the Rewa was still a princely state, and the king of Rewa, he went by the name Martand Singh. He was out on a hunt when he found a little white tiger cub. Now he was so mesmerized by this. This was the first time he had seen a white tiger cub, that he took this into captivity and he raised this tiger. And this tiger was named Mohan. Now Mohan, the white tiger, um, when he matured, what the king did was he bred him with tigresses to try and create more white tiger offspring. Now, since he was the only white tiger, he was mated with an orange tigress, but their children were all orange. All their offspring were orange. So the king sat back and wondered, "Oh my, how do I continue this lineage of white tigers?" So when these little cubs they grew up, he mated Mohan once again with his offspring, and then the resulting cubs that were born, they were all white cubs. So this reticent gene that they have, the recessive gene that they had, that came to the fore. And these cubs that were subsequently born, they were sent by Martand Singh to different zoos around the world, and one of these came to the Bombay Zoo. And this female tigress was from Bombay Zoo. But what was really sad is because of this inbreeding that took place, because they were mating within the family, they all had genetic disorders that they were born with. And she died quite young, and she was sent to the Natural History Society then, and her body underwent the process of taxidermy, and she was saved as a specimen. And finally, this is the last chapter. This is called Aesthetics and Perspective. Now, aesthetics, I really feel, is a very personal understanding of what you see, because your own notion of beauty and aesthetics can influence how you interpret something in front of you, which is why I'm talking about the idea of aesthetics and perspective. Now here is a painting, The Adoration of the Magi, which is from the studio of Bonifacio. He was a very prominent Italian painter in the 15th and 16th century. Now, this painter, along with several contemporaries, they painted some of the most beautiful cathedrals. If any of you have seen the cathedrals in Europe, they have very beautiful imagery painted, all over their ceilings, their walls, and many of these artists are considered forms of they're very high practitioners of art. If you compare this to the next painting here, this is a landscape painted by Jahangir Sabawala, who is an Indian artist, and this painting from his studio, he was an abstract artist. He did not paint in the traditional sense. If I were to say landscape, you'd think of, lush fields, cascading waterfalls, lofty mountains, but this is not really something that would come to your mind. But he was an abstract painter because he viewed the world in a different way, and his form of expression was very different. But what sets this particular painting quite apart is, if you see, you'll find little annotations in different places. You see the word brown, you see different numbers in different places. This was actually the last painting that this artist painted before he passed away, and this painting was left incomplete. On this artist's passing, his wife left the last 6 paintings that he made to our museum. And this painting is really special because it talks about his process as a painter. The different stages in which he planned and executed his paintings. And I feel it's very beautiful in its, although it's very stark and uh, very monotonous in that sense. If you look at it, I think it's got its own very unique beauty. And here you have a painting of another artist from Mumbai, Pestonji Bamanji, who is a very prominent painter of the Bombay School of Art. So the Bombay School of Art was actually established by the British in Mumbai with the patronage of Jamsetji Jijiboy. Jamsetji Jijiboy felt that it was very important for the aesthetics of Western culture to also find space in India, and a large group of artists were trained by the JJ School of Art, which you might have heard of, in this new form of art that was taught here. But what's really remarkable, Pestonji Bamanji was an award-winning painter who has made very beautiful, realistic studies of people. But in this painting, this is a painting of his daughter. And if you look at her, she is so beautifully painted with her features and her clothes. Even the expression on her face is so beautiful. But what you see here, this is a painting that he was working on. You can even see the easel on which this painting is mounted. And his naughty little daughter decided to paint over it. She decided that this award winning father of hers, this painting that he was working on, was not of her taste. And she decided to paint over it her own drawing. But what is really beautiful is that Pestonji Bamanji saw the beauty in his little daughter's painting, and he decided to make a painting of this. And finally, this is the last object that I would like to focus on. This is an embroidery which was made by a young child artist who goes by the name Manjula Naran Shamaria, and she is from Bhuj. So during the earthquake, she was so distraught by all the destruction around her that she decided to depict everything that they experienced as the people from this region. She decided to depict this in the form of ahir embroidery. So ahir embroidery is something that it's a form of craft that the local people in Bhuj use. And she learned this form of embroidery from her mother. And she was just 19 years old when she painted this. And this object was procured by the museum, it was collected by the museum shortly after the earthquake, after she made this embroidery, because we felt that it was very important that, we talk not only about craft and art that is historical in nature, that has historical significance, but it's also extremely important to focus on the craft of the local people today, crafts that are locally practiced, communities, and how they are impacted by the world around them. So with this, I will end my presentation today. And I really hope that has been interesting.
Yes, indeed, it is interesting. And just, I don't know how much you appreciate poetry, but I would like to say, भले एक बार होना चाहिए, भले एक बार होना चाहिए, हमें भी प्यार होना चाहिए, हमको भी प्यार होना चाहिए उन सब चीजों से जिन चीजों के बारे में आपने आज बताया. मैं यकीन नहीं कर सकती हूँ कि जिस बारीकी से आपने हर एक पहलू को बताया, हर एक चीज को बताया. You made us look into the intricacies and the finis of every form of art that we could talk of, whether it was embroidery. I did not pay attention to that Vande Mataram motive till you said that every sequin of that has got Vande Mataram, and I enlarged it to see. So again I will say, भले एक बार होना चाहिए, हमें भी प्यार होना चाहिए और प्यार होना चाहिए. इस प्यार के बिना आई थिंक जिंदगी बहुत उदास है, बदरंग है. एब्सोल्युटली कुछ नहीं है लाइफ में अगर हमको अप्रिशिएट करना नहीं आता है, भले वो प्लेट में रखा हुआ पराठा और सब्जी हो, या आपने कहा कि हॉर्नबिल का घोंसला हो, या फिर अकबर के शाहजहां किसी राजा की बाबरी करते हुए फोटोग्राफ हो, या किसी भगवान की या किसी देवता की तस्वीर हो. जब तक आप उसमें खूबसूरती नहीं ढूंढेंगे तब तक आप जीवन से नहीं जुड़ेंगे. रोबोट्स डू नॉट अप्रिशिएट, human does appreciate. And if we don't understand that difference and that point of line of like demarcation, then our lives are. I am so happy, Vaidehi. I can't tell you, as our principal said, in the 32 years of service that I have been doing, I visited museum at least 25 times, but never have I understood museum the way I have understood today. I'm talking about myself. I don't know about others, whether they've even once visited the museum. I have visited 25 times the museum. I can tell you which area your staircase go on, which floor do you find Akbar's sword, where do you find the ivory section, what are the exhibits in ivory section, but I did not know the finis, and this is what has made us understand. Thank you so very much for bringing museum to our homes, to our phones, to our laptops, and into our lives. Thank you very much. May we open the floor 10 minutes, Vaidehi, for question answers.
Sure.
It's already 11:51. I know you are. I'm again going to be your student in the afternoon. I have registered
Yes,
for that.
yes, we
I've
will see you
registered
at
for
3
that
o'clock again. Yes,
seminar. Again,
yes.
I'm going to be a student to learn more. This is my 4th seminar. I haven't missed even one seminar of yours. So
Yeah.
I will be a student again at 3 o'clock in the
I
afternoon.
think it's incredibly encouraging, Sabiha ji, that you've been attending all our sessions, because it's, when we see that people are interested, that, it motivates us to do more. So thank you so much for, all your encouragement by participating.
In fact, thank you. In fact, your Kritika madam said that we can only give you 2, and I said, requested, please enroll me for all the 4. And I've been so prompt that I've never missed a session on that.
Yeah.
I love to be a part of this, Yes, students, please unmute yourself and try to ask questions. Anybody who's there who would like to ask a question? Ashlesha Kamble, were you there to ask a question?
No, ma'am. Ma'am,
Okay.
it was a very beautiful session.
Okay, at least you can say that. Anup Pandey, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please come near the mic, Anup, and please say. And the students from Srimati Maniben MP Shah's College of Arts and Commerce, please unmute yourself after Anup and ask the question. Yes, Anup, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, Vaidehi ma'am. You have given us so much informative and session. So I felt like I have been not only me, all of us have been teleported to a museum, and it was so lively that we cannot differentiate that we are at home and viewing your session. So I just want to thank you very much giving this such a sessions. I have a question. Like in our syllabus and curriculum, should we students have a things to study in on museums, so they can get more interest in this, and they can get more attached to it, and it will benefit students as well as the society also. So please comment your views on this. Thank you so much, ma'am.
I think that would be ideal if the idea of museums can be formally incorporated, because a lot of our work with schools and colleges, people usually come to the museum as a recreational space. So whenever they want to have their field trip, picnic, that's when they come to the museum. So it's not until children actually step into the museum that they realize that the potential, that lies over there. So I think it would be ideal if it could be incorporated in syllabus. Having said that, what we are doing as a museum is we collaborate with a lot of schools and colleges, and we create special programs for people drawing from the museum's collections, where we can help with classroom teaching. Because if you look at it, apart, of course, from history or literature, or the very obvious sort of references, you can use museum collections to study a whole lot of different things. So right from, in at least in terms of our museum, right from natural history to sciences, there's so much to do. So what we do is we create little sessions for different schools based on their requirements, where we try and incorporate the museum and its collections and help them enhance curricular learning. So while I don't think we'd have too much control on what it's actually part of the curriculum, this is our effort as a museum to try and bridge that little gap.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to ask a question, please? Anybody?
Ma'am,
Yes.
I would like to, it is not a question, but I would like to say that this museum, generally we feel that history students is interested and the history stream goes ahead.
Correct.
But I would like to know how the arts and commerce students can make a career in this, and how they can join the further educations in this, or what is the guidance for them?
Honestly, a museum is such an interdisciplinary space. I cannot even tell you. A curator is probably the only person in the museum who needs a degree in history. Every other person who works in the museum very rarely has a degree in history at all. So the conservators who work in the museum, like the piece I showed you, the ivory piece that was cleaned up by the conservators, all of them are science students. So they would have studied chemistry and physics, and I'm talking about like hardcore science. We even have scientists working in the museum, like people with advanced degrees in science who work. We've got educators. So our entire education department, it's usually a combination of people who have studied history and a combination of people who have degrees in education. So we have people with like formal, I'm talking about B.Eds, who work in our museum as well. We have a huge department of administration with lots of commerce graduates, people with MBAs working, because at least in terms of our museum, we don't receive funding from the government. So every project that we work on, our day-to-day running, we do a lot of fundraising. We do a lot of, we apply to different kinds of projects and funding proposals from different institutions. So we have a very thriving account section. So I cannot even tell you how multidisciplinary the museum is as a space,
Okay, Purnima Warrior, please go ahead.
Can you little bit elaborate for a sociology student or economics students or Hindi? Definitely literature can join, but this stream is new for this students. They never thought about this stream.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate little bit?
Actually, when you think about a museum's collection, when you look at any of the objects in a museum, a historical perspective is usually a very singular approach. Trying to find out which dynasty made it, which period made it, that's a very singular approach to take. But an object can be interpreted from different points of view. So even a sociologist, even an anthropologist would find so much value in looking at these objects, because all of these objects have been made by people through time. They're reflective of really how we have as a species grown through the centuries. So I personally feel irrespective of which stream you've studied, you would find value, you would find a way to contribute to the museum. And honestly, I don't think, at least whenever we are recruiting, whenever the museum is recruiting, we have a very broad we take people from very broad categories. This that we put up, what do you call it, the qualifications that we're looking for are usually quite open-ended, and I think we're quite open to taking in people from different streams, because it enriches us as a team. And together, if you have people from different disciplines, it really enriches the kind of research or the work that you're doing, and it allows you a chance to communicate very different ideas to your audience. So I think, again, I don't think any stream would, feel alienated in this space.
Just to add to Hina ma'am, Vaidehi has done an entire section on Shakespeare, which is a pure English literature aspect,
Yes.
which the museum has taken over. And so you see language coming on. Then she has taken a complete section on Lee Gautami, the pictures, that means history is coming in. So that way, all subjects do amalgamate under the roof of any museum in the world, not only Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Any, yes, Purnima Warrior, please go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Good morning to one and all present here. Good morning, Vaidehi ma'am. Thank you so much for giving us a virtual tour of a museum, as Anup rightly said. I really enjoyed. And since yesterday Sabia ma'am told us this thing is going to happen, I was like waiting that what all I'll get to see, what all new things I'll hear. And I'm sure since this YouTube stream is going to be saved on the platform, I'll be viewing it 5 to 10 times again and again, so that everything goes well in my mind. And in future, I can also spread it with my students. So my question is, ma'am, these days, a lot of people have a preconception that museums are boring, and they go to museum visit with that thing in their mind. So even if what they see is interesting, still because of that preconception, they do not accept it in front of people that the visit was nice, they did see some new things, they did learn. So is there a way that before we take children to these kind of visits, kind of help them understand that what they're going to see is really going to be a gem of our cultures, our tradition and everything? Is there any way we could give them a beforehand trailer so that they are ready to view the picture in a much more anticipatory way?
And Vaidehi, if you can take the next question. Our colleague, Dr. Mandole, is asking that how do we know about the activities of Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum? So please give the answer correct so that both the questions can be taken. And our colleague, Dr. Kadle, is asking, is there any arrangement made for special needs children in the museum? Yes. So all three of them, you can answer it together. Okay.
Sure. So to answer Purnima's question, I completely agree with this. People do tend to have a mindset, like a preconceived notion about what a museum is. What we do is what we've tried to do before is to offer a warm-up session to schools before they come. There's something very similar to what we did today, where we talk about objects that, when you look at it face value, you don't quite get why they are special, or how you may feel a connection to it. But what we do is, through the workshop, we get children themselves to think about what the value is in that object, so that when they come to the museum, when they're looking at an object, immediately they're in their minds, questioning it and looking at it from different points of view. Also, what I think really helps with kids is that when you come to the museum, it can be quite overwhelming to go over the entire space. Very often, I think schools tend to just bring kids in and like a little queue, they just go through the entire museum without really seeing anything. My strong suggestion is that if you contact us before you come, we can do an orientation session for the kids as well. We've got lots of spaces in the museum where we can get all the kids to sit, and we talk to them about what the point of this visit is, things that they should really look out for, and help you sort of create a little trail through the museum that the kids will find valuable, because it's also not nice to overwhelm them with so much. So I think maybe that's one strategy that could work. The other question was, how do you come to know about courses and workshops? So we do upload stuff on our museum website, but I feel that a lot of our audience is very social media savvy. So a lot of our announcements go up on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you subscribe to any of our channels, you will see daily updates coming up. So that's a great way to keep in touch. We've also got a mailing list. And at the start of the month, we release a calendar of events that we do through the month. So if you write to us, we can add you to the list and you will come to know of everything we've planned. There's a question on
special need children. Do you have
yes,
anything for special
we
needs?
do in fact. So I think the museum itself, we've undertaken a lot of care in trying to make the museum as physically accessible as
You
possible.
have those headphones also, I believe. For
We do. We've
yeah.
got audio guides for people with visual impairment. We've got audio guides. We've also got braille booklets that people can use. I mean, if sometimes people may find the audio guide a little too overwhelming when you're navigating the space, we do have braille booklets that people can make that they can avail of. We've got guided tours that we give on site. So even if a person was to walk into the museum on the day of their visit and say that we would like to avail of a tour, our education department is more than happy to take visitors through the museum. We also have a lot of facilities on site. We've got wheelchairs that are quite state of the art, so that if people need to make use of them when they come on campus, that's there. And also, I feel in terms of access, what's really important for us is all of the information in the museum itself is available in multiple languages. So, while we think of access in terms of physical disability, it's also really important to think about intellectually whether you are accessible to people. And all of the information on site is available in English, Hindi, and Marathi. And our audio guides are also available in foreign languages to make sure that people can really make the most out of this experience. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, just one last question from two of our participants. Is there a course that you offer to students?
Yes, we do. So we have a postgraduate diploma in museology and conservation that the museum runs. You get a postgraduate diploma at the end of it. It's a 1-year part-time course, because the idea is that we train people who are already professionals working in different fields. It's not limited to just people who are working in a museum. You could literally be from any field. I think the basic qualification is you need to have completed your bachelor's, and you can sign up for this course, and it's conducted 2 days a week only, Mondays and Saturdays, so it's easier for working people to take it up. However, at present, this course has been put on hold because of the pandemic. It's affiliated to the University of Mumbai, and we're still awaiting guidelines from the university about new academic intake. Because it's a part-time course, it's only 2 days a week, it's incredibly hands-on. And museology and conservation is not really something that you can teach entirely online. While we can, of course, have lectures and presentations, a lot of it's very important to be in the museum space, and it's very important to be able to learn on site. So, intake for this academic year will depend entirely upon the university directives. So that's there. But there's also a lot of other museology courses around the country. I think the National Museum in Delhi offers a full master's in museology. There's also the University of Baroda. They offer a full master's. I believe there are quite a few other formal university programs around the country.
So thank you. And the last question, Bhagyashri, please go ahead and ask your question. After that, we call.
Thank you, ma'am. It's not a question. I just wanted to add one more thing, that our museum, it has a facility of museum on wheels. They
Correct.
put certain artifacts in a very well arranged bus, and they take those artifacts to particular schools, and they show those artifacts to children who cannot manage to come to the museum. Museum itself goes to them. This point I wanted to add. And in education department there in museum, Mrs. Bilva Kulkarni ma'am and Nilanjana ma'am have done quite a lot of work for development of that museum on wheels. And Purnima, I wanted to tell you that it was a trailer like thing when I saw it for the first time. It was like they used to arrange certain things related to the syllabus, and they were not the real ones. They were a copy of those items, so that anything is lost or damaged, then it would not be a penalty for the school or the museum. So that is what I liked about it.
Thank you, Bhagyashree. So thank you once again, Vaidehi ma'am. It was really very beautiful. Hope to see you again sometime with some new ideas that will increase in my mind, and I'll ask you to please lead my children. Some of them are going to become teachers, so let them have enough of love for the museum so that they can become your hand to mouth publicity instruments, and they can make museum popular amongst the young learners of Mumbai, at least, if not anywhere else. Thank you very much. Now
Thank
may
you.
I invite Dr. Yogita Mandole to propose a formal vote of thanks. Yogita Mandole, please go
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am. Thank you so much, Sabia, ma'am. Good afternoon, one and all. On behalf of Gandhi Shikshan Bhavan, Srimati Surajbha College of Education, I take this opportunity to propose a formal vote of thanks. Ma'am, really felt good to see such a young and dynamic person like you promoting aesthetics. It is rightly said, beauty is how you feel inside and it reflects in your eyes. It is not something physical. Vaidehi ma'am, such a beautiful and different presentation which catched our eyes. It was full of knowledge and had lot of variations, ma'am. You made us understand the roles museums play in an individual's life, which connects one generation to the other. मैम हिंदी में कहा जाता है नजर नहीं नजरिया बदलो. The insight which you gave us while connecting aesthetics to function, to beliefs, to skill, expression, language, historicity, perspective was really commendable, ma'am. You beautifully connected it to each and every aspect, expression, and emotions of our lives. We are really thankful for making us walk through a very different journey of museum with a totally different perspective, ma'am. Thank you so much. I further would like to thank both the coordinators from Srimati Surajbha College of Education, Sabia More ma'am, and Dr. Hina Shah from Srimati Maniben MP Shah Women's College of Arts and Commerce for arranging such sessions. I would also like to thank the principal of both the colleges, Dr. Judy Grace Andrews and Dr. Lena Raze, for taking initiatives and collaborating for such programs. Friends, I would like to thank the prayer group and the technical support team of students from both the colleges. I would like to thank the teachers and other staff of both the colleges for attending this session. Last but not the least, I would like to thank my all dear student participants, without which this program wouldn't have been successful. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Yogita Mandole, for proposing that vote of thanks. I hope this session has made my all learners across both the colleges more wise, and it has instilled some amount of wisdom in them, so that whenever they see an article next time, a piece of cloth next time, a piece of music next time, a piece of artifact next time, a person next time, a child next time, they have a better understanding of looking at things rather than looking at it superfluously. Please, they may also have an insight deep down in understanding everything that God has created in and around us is extremely beautiful. It's very nice of you to appreciate somebody's skills of preserving things in the correct perspective through painting, through architecture, through sculpture, through woodcraft, through ironsmith, to goldsmith, to everything. Become a connoisseur of art, become a connoisseur of humanity, become a connoisseur of goodness. And that is what is supposed to be a good human being. Thank you very much. May we all rise for the national anthem. Monica, please play the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you one and all. We meet on Monday again for the last day of our 5th day and the last day of our week-long value workshop from 1 to 3. Please be ready. I'll be sending the flyers very soon and the program list also. Thank you once again. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. FYBEds will join for the lecture at 1 o'clock.
Thank you, madam. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Bye.